welcome to our event here tonight. Thank you for coming out. Hopefully,
I've been called a lot
it's not already raining. We'll have some rain if we need it very much. I'm Roth Stratton, WBRT, WOKH radio here in Bardstown. And on behalf of our radio station and on behalf of the Nelson County Gazette, we want to welcome you here tonight to our candidates forum for Nelson County Judge Executive. And we want to make note that our good friend Jim Brooks from Nelson County Gazette was going to be with us tonight. He's a little bit under the weather, but he sent the A-team in, his wife and son, and so you'll see details and replays on the Nelson County Gazette in the time ahead. We believe we're on Facebook Live. We believe we're on Bardstown Cable Channel 19, and again, we welcome you here this evening. Before we get started, would everybody please, if they would, rise and salute the flag as we do the Pledge of the Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Time for me to step out of the way and introduce to you Mr. Bill Spalding, who does mornings on WBRT and is an integral part of our news operation.
Thank you, Rolf. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the forum this evening. It's my honor and privilege to welcome to you to the event tonight, and also our moderator, Stan Mullins of Modern Woodmen of America. He's a former Nelson County resident and currently in Hardin County. He has hosted several such events, such as this, I believe, in northern Hardin County. Again, we'd like to welcome you, and also hand it over now to Mr. Stan Mullins.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. I'm very excited to be here. As he said, I'm Stan Mullins, and I'll be your moderator tonight. Very pleased to do so. We have two candidates running for Nelson County Judge Executive, and I just want to remind everyone, as you know, November 8th is coming very swiftly, and so I just want to introduce first, to my left I have Eric Shelburne, and to my right I have Mr. Tim Hutchins. So please welcome these candidates. As far as rules tonight, they're very, very simple. We have a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate, and the first couple of questions, we're going to allow a 1-minute response because they're kind of softball questions, and then after that, there's going to be a 1.5-minute response after that, and the closing statements will be limited to 2.5 minutes, I believe. So I'll double check that. But we're going to do these questions in a serpentine manner. There will be no specific rebuttals. But if I ask one candidate something, then the next candidate will have the same question, and that second candidate will have the first question that's coming up next, okay? I'd like first to, or initially, to introduce our timekeepers, which are Barry Saylor and his lovely wife Lisa, that are right here, and they have church fans for the candidates. Candidates, I'd like for you to see that. We have 30 seconds remaining for your response, and then we have another one that says, your time's up, guys. Okay, so please, let's respect our restraints on time, and if possible, let's keep on topic of the question at hand. Okay, so as we begin, we're going to have an opening statement. We're going to begin with Mr. Eric Shelburne, please, with a 2-minute opening statement about your story and why you're running for Judge Executive.
Okay, thank you, Stan. And first, I'd just like to thank WBRT. I'd like to thank Ross Stratton. I'd like to also thank you again, Stan Mullins, for moderating, and everyone who took the time to come out here tonight. I especially want to thank the volunteers that have poured their heart and soul into this campaign. I want to thank my family who have been supportive of me through this journey. I don't think many people understand how much your family is affected and how much they have to endure in this process. Ultimately, I would like to thank God for leading me to this door. There have been enormous peaks, but there have also been some really low valleys in this campaign, and he has carried me through every bit of it. I'm Eric Shelburne. I'm currently serving as your 5th District Magistrate. My wife and I own and operate Sheer Magic in Bloomfield. We have 2 children, Emma, 21, and Jack is 17 years old. Jack's a senior this year at Nelson County, and Emma is actually working in Sheer Magic with her mother in our family business. I served at the City of Bardstown for over 22 years as a power lineman, which has given me the unique experience to have served in local government and also as a government official now today. I have a strong record of being fiscally conservative as a magistrate and also in my personal life. I can't spend my money frivolously, and I certainly wouldn't spend other people's money frivolously. I have a strong record of being a unifier, and it will be important that our judge executive has all of those leadership qualities. This is the leader I will be for Nelson County, a relationship builder, a unifier representing all of Nelson County, despite your political party or your demographics. I have the right leadership qualities, the relevant experiences and relationships with a grasp of today's technology that will be necessary to lead Nelson County into the future.
Very good. Mr. Hutchins, your opening statement.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Tim Hutchins, running for Nelson County Judge Executive, of course, and I want to thank Jim Brooks, of course, and his son and family for being here, and Roth and Stan Mullins. It's good that he put this together to get this message out to people, because there is a huge difference in the 2 campaigns, and hopefully everybody can see that tonight. I want to thank my wife, Gina. She's been a very big supporter and actually one of my co-campaign managers with Christy, my niece. And they have led me and done a lot of great things. I couldn't do it without them, for sure. I also want to thank God for helping me. He's been good to me. I've had a great life and been blessed when you look around. So I've been very blessed in my life. I've had some ups and downs, but just lucky that could be a lot worse, I think. Gina and I together have 8 children and 5 grandchildren, and I still got one at home. Chloe, she's in 8th grade, and she's probably taken the brunt of it all, because she's still in school and basketball and soccer, or not soccer, but volleyball. It's kind of tough to rotate all the schedules. I want to thank my volunteers. It's very humbling, and we're still putting out signs and had to order more signs, and at this stage of the race you wouldn't think so, but I've had so many people out there in the county that has been great supporters and door knockers and putting up signs and just talking to people. So it's been very, it's been a very good feeling for everybody. It's been very supportive. So, I've lived and worked in the county all my life and run the Handy Food Mart. We've been there for 50 years, and I farmed my entire life and run a construction company my entire life. So I've got a lot of experience. I was a magistrate for 17 years, worked with all the cities in the county. Worked with all the different department heads, and I've got the experience to do this job, and I've got relationships with state and federal officials, so I think I'm very qualified for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. At this time, I'm going to give the candidates a copy of the questions that are upcoming, but I want to remind them that they may not be asked in this particular order, and they won't all possibly be asked, but I want them to be able to review it so they can be clear, and we'll repeat the questions as necessary.
Get the answers too.
No answers. I also would like to remind everyone in the audience, if at all possible, to put your phones on airplane mode so we don't have interruptions here. So we had the opening statements, and the first question is going to, again, serpentine manner, is going to go to Mr. Hutchins. And the question, sir, is please tell our audience, in your words, the duties and responsibilities of the office of Judge Executive in Nelson County, sir.
There's, Judge Executive, people ask me this all the time. You think people would understand it a little bit, but it's kind of like what I'd say, you can explain it like the mayor of the city and then the council. So the judge is kind of like the mayor, and you got 5 magistrates, and then you've got, I think this year it's a $58 million budget, and it's a lot of money. You have to help maintain the jail. You got a jailer you got to work with, sheriff's department, and you got to approve both of those budgets. You have to approve the county clerk's budget and negotiate with them on maybe ways to cut or spend money or whatever. So ambulance service is a big thing. Nelson County landfill is huge. Nelson County garbage service, county roads, drainage. You support with the water infrastructure, internets with the cities and municipalities. It's just a whole lot to health department. There's a big piece of the judge has to entertain all that and keep some magistrates and work with them to manage that. It's a lot of different projects in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. And again, Mr. Shelburne, please tell our audience, remind us in your words, the duties and responsibilities of the office of Judge Executive in Nelson County.
The office of the judge executive, man, it's as broad. I've said this before. It's as broad as it is long. You know, there's a lot of responsibilities. You have the fiscal court and the county judge all have a responsibility to have a jail or house inmates. He also has a responsibility to police the county. He also, has to have. I think the most important quality is being able to build and maintain good relationships. You should have good relationships with not just your employees, but with each branch of local government and private partners as well. My opponent's not completely wrong on the budget of $58 million, but and where we could cut and trim, and I've looked at all those, and really we run pretty lean. A lot of that money in last year's budget through that $58 million was ARPA funding, which is going to be passed through one-time funding. Our budget's really accurately more around $26 million, and it is some of that is also pass-through money.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. Our next question is going to allow a 1-minute response, and it's going to be posed to Mr. Shelburne first. The Nelson County residential garbage fee includes the cost of dead animal removals, which are primarily from farming operations. It has been suggested to separate these animal removal costs from the residential services. Would you recommend such a separation, and if so, what would be the benefits, sir?
I'm glad you asked this question. And the reason being, there might have been some confusion, and I was glad to clear that up. Right now, our garbage fees are at $16 a month. And in that garbage fee service, you get your regular garbage pickup, you get the dead animal service, you also get your recycling and bulky item pickup. And I'm just going to tell you, that's a heck of a deal. We got one of the lowest rates in the state, and we've got a lot of folks that don't have all of those services with that. I think it would be a complete mistake. Everyone benefits from dead animal pickup, regardless if you're a farmer or not. It keeps our rivers clean. It keeps people from dumping them. It's a good service, and I would definitely not separate it. I don't think it's broken. I wouldn't try to fix it.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. Mr. Hutchins.
When I was on the court, I helped put this program together with Farm Bureau Extension Office. The group that was picking up dead animals was basically going under because of the cost of the picking up animals, and so we ended up taking it over and using it, and the state allowed us to use the landfill for this, so I helped put this program together. And since then, there's been a lot of grant money. Extension Office put more money in the Farm Bureau. This particular year, I think the state's contributing $18,000 to that. So I don't see where there'd be any need to separate any of it. I think it's a great thing. Like I say, I helped put this program together. Nation Brothers used to be the one to pick their animals up. Of course, I'm the only farmer in this race, and I farmed all my life, still farm, and I know how important it is. And the farmers utilize this tremendously throughout the county.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The next question to you, sir, you'll be first. So you have 1.5 minutes to answer this question, please. The last structural upgrade to the Nelson County Jail occurred prior to 1993. Would you support a renovation and expansion of our current jail facilities, or would you want to build a brand new facility, sir?
There's been a lot of discussion about the jail. I was involved in it heavily before. The inmate numbers are actually down from when I was a magistrate before. The state laws change, what you gotta be real careful with. I know there's been a lot of talk and debate about this subject. The jail definitely needs improvements. Buck Snellman has made some tremendous improvements since he's been the jailer. Just like your house, you gotta upgrade it, remodel it, paint it, put new floors, locks, doors, whatever. That's been kind of let go in the last 10, 12 years, I'd say. And they let it go too far. So it definitely needs some remodeling. And if we can add on to it, the biggest problem is your female inmates. You've only got 27 beds there, I think, for the females. And the female population has increased a lot. So that's something that has to be fixed. So I definitely want to put some money in it and spread it out and do a little bit at a time and get it improved. I don't want to build a hotel for the inmates. I'm not a big fan of the inmates coming in and living like a hotel. So I'm 100% against that. If we have to build a new jail, there's been talk about expansion with the 3 or 4 counties coming together. I would look at that. I haven't looked at it. Nobody's presented that to me yet. If it would be cost feasible. The biggest problem, you got to be careful that it's $45 to $50 million, and the state can change this one little rule, and you can lose a lot of inmates. If they decriminalize marijuana or cocaine, and you got a 500-bed jail, and all of a sudden you're down to 200, you can't pay your debt service. So I don't want to put this county in that kind of jeopardy.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. So, Mr. Shelton, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes, please.
Okay. The last structural upgrade to the Nelson County Jail occurred prior to 1993. Would you support a renovation and expansion of our current jail facilities, or would you want to build a brand new facility, sir?
So, you know, one of the challenges that the next fiscal court and the judge executive is going to have is there's going to be some constitutional office changes, and one of those is going to be we're going to be having a new jailer. I'm looking forward to working with the new jailer to tackle some of the problems that are at the jail. What's interesting about this question is my opponent, he has had the opportunity back when he was serving 10 or 12 years ago. They had a proposition to expand the jail for low-risk inmates and to also do a remodel. At the time, the cost was going to be about $2 million, and here we are today looking at possibility of having to expand the jail and possibility, and it definitely does need some remodeling. I was glad to support putting those new locks in that jail. It definitely needs some work, and I will be glad to address that when I become the next Nelson County Judge Executive.
To do a rebuttal, sir?
Well, I was going to ask, Mr. Shelburne, is that in favor of a renovation or in favor of a new facility, sir?
Right now, you would have to gauge, like I said, you would have to work with the jailer, find out the direct needs. Right now, our capacity is right at about what our capacity is about 100, varies 105, 100. So really, we're working well with the capacity of the jail. It does need a remodel. It could use some extra beds in there for overflow. But like I said, years ago, the cost was $2 million. Now today, I'd say that price would be inflated to at least 60% more than that.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. And Mr. Hutchins, I'll give you 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could have built a $25 million new jail 10 years ago. It'd be $50 million today. So I don't think you want to waste money just because you think inflation is going to happen, which it has happened. The fact of the matter is, we did not support that as a magistrates did not support that expansion because it was much cheaper to pay Hardin County to house inmates and transfer them to Hardin County than house them in the jail. And it's on paper, and it's public record, so you can pull it up and look at it. So it would have been a waste of money at the time, and we didn't do it because we didn't want to waste the taxpayers' money.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The next question is going to be directed to Mr. Shelburne first, with a minute and a half for response. For years, there have been discussions of building a new recreational complex, which would include an aquatic center. This would be a county Bardstown City cooperative. Would you share your thoughts on this proposal, including how the costs of construction, maintenance, and staffing might be met, sir?
There's been a lot of discussions on it. There's actually been a lot of studies on having a recreational complex with you know, with an aquatic center in or attached to it. You know, it's all about the pay-fors, and really we haven't gotten a definitive answer on what it would cost for construction and what those ongoing costs would be. I have been in some direct talks with Mayor Heaton, and we have talked a little bit about this and a interlocal agreement between the city and the county to be able to provide Nelson County with a facility like this. I mean, Nelson County deserves something like this. You know, I have actually had conversations about how it may be paid for. I'm not sure he would actually like me to share any of that, but you know, part of it was you know, a couple of cents on your restaurant tax, or you know, your ongoing costs. You're going to definitely make some money there. I'm not sure it's going to pay for the whole facility. You know, you see all these other communities. You see Springfield just getting a splash park. Mercer County's got a pool and a splash park. There's no reason why Nelson County, and we've been behind providing these kind of amenities to our citizens that absolutely deserve some kind of recreation facility for kids, especially now that we've seen our movie theaters and our skating rings and our bowling alley and all those things that caters to our kids leave. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting in the weeds of this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. Mr. Hutchins.
Well, the fact of the matter is, in 1994, when I became a magistrate, and I was coaching heavily. I volunteered as a coach for like 15, 16 years, and was involved in a lot of youth sports, and soccer was growing, and the county judge asked me to take the lead, and because I was the only one on the fiscal court at that time that was involved in sports, and we built what you call Dean Watts Park today. We saved some money, we bonded it out, paid for it, spent probably over $2 million out there. So we took the charge and did it. My opponent has not led this charge to do it. You've got Marion County, which is about half the size of Nelson County, and they're putting in a new multi-purpose center now. It's got 3 or 4 gymnasiums in it. Lebanon, Springfield, I think the city of Springfield is putting in the splash park, and we haven't done that. So my opponent's been on the court almost 4 years now and hadn't made a move to make a motion or come up with some plans on that. When I was master, I was a leader and not a follower on the court. So I've already got a task force in place. I've got people from New Haven and Bloomfield, Fairfield, and the city of Bardstown to start this process when and if I get elected. And I would be very happy to join the city of Bardstown. I've met with some people on it. There is going to be some naming rights, and you definitely going to have some private money involved. And he's definitely, you know, that's his lack of inexperience, because you know there's not enough money to pay for it. I mean, anybody can say there's going to be enough money to pay for it. It's just crazy with the fees, or nobody would be able to afford to use it. So the cost is going to be tremendous.
Rebuttal.
30 seconds, sir.
My opponent likes to throw around, you know, these wild task force. I'm curious about what that task force consists of. I've actually had my feet on the ground doing some real-time research. I had the opportunity to meet with Mercer County's Judge Mosley. I got to see how they accomplished that goal with a much smaller county and a much smaller budget. They have a splash park, and they're adding another splash park along with their aquatic center. There's grant money available. There's partnerships to be made, and I'm looking forward to being the leader that brings that home to Nelson County.
Mr. Hutchins, 30 seconds if you choose.
Well, I mean, he's been a master for 4 years, and why hasn't he done it? He'd have said Mercer County's half the size of Nelson County. It gives you another, we got 48,000 people roughly, and you know, you can't just keep asking somebody to lead the charge. I mean, you got to be the leader to get these things done. And you've got the young adults in this county and the kids, and it's not just sports tied in. I'm 100% not in favor of just an enclosed pool. It's got to be a very diverse recreational park and a splash park, and that's the only way I would ever support it. It's got to be something that's more for the whole population.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The next question is going to be posed to you, Mr. Hutchins. It's going to be a 1.5 minute response available to you. Outsourcing some community or county services such as EMS, garbage collection, and road department mowing has been a topic of debate lately. Would you say such outsourcing would reduce costs or improve quality of service, or possibly both, or neither? And you have 1.5 minutes, sir.
Well, you've got a lot of things combined here. I don't think EMS should be included in any of these other road departments and things, because EMS is a life-saving entity that when I was on the fiscal court, we purchased that so we wouldn't have a private company coming in, and the center in the city of Bardstown, well, they could make money, there's no doubt. Yellow Cab and some of them could make money if they utilized just the city of Bardstown. I think we got about 425 square miles in the county, Fairfield, Chapman, New Hope, and all that, and they would definitely be left out. So we brought that ambulance service under the umbrella of the fiscal court, paid for it without raising taxes, and got a very great service. And with the state, you've got to work with the state legislators, even the federal, to get some of these Medicare and Medicaid increases to get. That's where the numbers are losing money, because you do not get reimbursed enough. And it's going to be about a month. And I've always said I think this is part of doing business. If you want to have a life-saving entity in the county, that when you call 911, so I would never vote to separate, keep it under the county umbrella. When you go back to the road department and garbage collection, my opponent's kind of putting some of those out there. What I said back there, I don't know when it was, is as the county grows, and they do it now. We did it, I guess they do it now. We did it when I was on the court. We would contract out people to remove salt or spread salt on the road, remove ice and snow, instead of have to hire a whole team. You can contract out things when you grow and save money, because you don't have to pay all those benefits, just like Mago does the Bluegrass Parkway today. And so that's where I'm at. If you have to contract out things that support your staff without hiring people, yes.
Okay.
But not the ambulance service at all.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Shelburne, would you like me to read the question again, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. Outsourcing some county services such as EMS, garbage collection, and road department mowing has been a topic of debate lately. Would you say such outsourcing would reduce costs or improve quality of service, or possibly both, or neither? And you have 1.5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, I do not agree that, I do not think it's a good idea to separate the EMS. I would be really concerned about the rural areas losing service. As it stands, we have a station in Bloomfield, we have a station in New Haven, we have one in Bardstown, and that has worked well for our community. And when you talk about saving lives, and you talk about the responsibility of police and EMS protection, that's probably one of the most paramount duties of a public official. I mean, that's one of the most important things. It's funny that my opponent wants to bounce off talking about using contractors to do our snow removal service. I also think that that's a terrible idea to completely remove our under control of the county, because of several different reasons. You're going to lose service, for one. Those contracting services that come in and do those big snow removals, they don't. They're not going to be out on Ridge, and they're not going to be out on Love Ridge, and they're not going to be out on Patton Road when you want them to. And right now we've got a really good service. We can control the way the salt is being used. Contractors typically have a reputation of wasting some of those products when they're spreading salt, because they don't really want to bring them back. When you talk about removing those services, or contracting those services, you're talking about losing service that Nelson Countyans expect.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby.
Rebuttal.
30 seconds, sir.
Well, he said it was funny. I think he said it was funny. I don't see nothing funny about slick roads, but
I didn't say it was funny.
Just because his lack of inexperience again, we have contracted out many years as a magistrate when we had disasters to come in and help clear roads. And when you have the experience that I've got in the construction business, you subcontract out a lot of things when you can't handle the load when it comes in today, because you have to pay all these benefits and insurance and all that. And unlike my opponent, I think when you privatize as much as you can, I think to get the government out of the way, I think you're a lot better off. And I never said I would privatize the county road department. I don't know where that came up at. I've never said that.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Shelburne, do you have anything to add, sir?
You know, he did say it, he said it at the courthouse, and he just said it again also when he said, you know, he's gonna save some money on insurance and benefits. So I think that pretty much tells the tale on that.
So the next question is going to be posed to Mr. Shelburne first. This is a 1.5 minute response, and this is something that, this is going to cut close to the quick here. As far as counties in Kentucky, this is probably a bigger thing in Nelson County than any other county. So I'll read it as follows. There are discussions in Frankfort of revising or eliminating the barrel tax distilleries pay, of which an estimated $8.6 million comes to Nelson County. Some of the past contracts with the distilleries waived property taxes for up to 30 years because of expected barrel tax income. If the barrel tax is eliminated or curbed, how would you address these older contracts, Mr. Shelburne?
Well, you know, they're going to have a fight on their hands for sure. You know, it's going to be difficult. What's fortunate is that the fiscal court that I'm a part of now has kind of been able to peek around corners and revise some of these IRBs that we've passed since I've been on court. And one of those is the distilled abandonment, unused abandonment, which means that if those barrels were to no longer be in those warehouses, we would get a pilot fund. That pilot fund would be a payment in lieu of taxes equal to the amount of what was getting paid before. Also, this proposition about removing the barrel tax had never been proposed until 2020. It's important to understand that since that time we have made clauses in those IRBs that addresses this very issue. It would be detrimental if this happened, and some of those older some of those older IRBs would have to be addressed. I would hope that we could battle it out in court, and we would be able to be a breach of contract.
You know, when he lives on battling out in court, and he didn't have enough foresight to think about this ahead of time, and then when he started that in 2020, he'd only been on the court for about a year, and I gave him a little credit because of his youth and inexperience. He didn't have enough foresight to look at it, but they should have looked at this beforehand, because there's been talk about this not only in the last 3 years. There's been some discussions. It might not have been in the committee meeting, but there's been discussions about it. And in reality, my opponent has voted for over $500 million in IRBs, which gives the, I think we've lost about 9-point-something million in property tax revenues because of that. I'll go on record right now saying I'm not against any industrial revenue bonds, but they've got to be structured correctly, just like any business deal. Then you don't have to fight them out in court like he just suggested after the fact. A contract's a contract, and you need to abide by your contract if you signed it. You just messed up when you didn't put all the pilot programs in there on the first ones. And they did the last, I think 3, they've done the last 3, maybe where the schools will get their tax, and then the fiscal court maybe in one of them, or 2 of them, that they'll get their tax, property tax. They take care of the big business, and small business is getting left out, just like it always is, always has been. That's the way it is around the country. And I don't think anybody in this room's got any property tax credits that I can see. I know I have it. I've got several small businesses, and I know I've talked to many people who've had small businesses around the town and built some different buildings, and none of them has got any property tax credits. So they cater and all to the big business. And I don't know how you're going to fight it out in court when you signed the contract and voted for it.
I want to clarify something here. IRBs, we're talking shop talk. That's industrial revenue bonds, and most of you probably know that, but they're issued in lieu of property taxes. Okay, so that's a shorthand and kind of shop talk here. And we're gonna discuss this in the next question, which is actually.
I'd like to have a rebuttal on that.
Rebuttal, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah. So when my opponent talks about these industrial revenue bonds in such a negative way, I think it's a really narrow-minded view of the way to look at the grow industry and jobs in this county. The fact of the matter is, if you want to remain attractive and you want to be a competitor for these industries that are coming in, you really have to step your game up. Fortunately, we've got Fuji-Seal here that benefited from industrial revenue bonds. We have, of course, our bourbon industry. I was very pleased to pass this last one for Heaven Hills Distillery, that was getting ready to go to Shelbyville. And if we'd have lost that, and that's a $135 million investment in our community
Rebuttal.
with downstream jobs.
His time's up, rebuttal.
Yes, Mr. Shelby, thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Hutchins,
Well,
30
that's
seconds, please.
$135 million that you're not gonna see for 30 years. I don't know if you like that or not, 30 years. $135 million, and you won't see any property taxes on it for 30 years. I mean, there's some people might be for it, but there's a lot of people out against it. And you said last debate, you was all over the county and everybody's happy and booming and doing great. Well, you must be campaigning in another county, what I'm seeing, because everybody I talked to say when they got their tax bills last week, they're not real happy. And if you raise your taxes like, if you didn't give all these breaks, you could have lowered the property tax rate on a lot of these local people.
I claim my time. I'd like a rebuttal.
You can use your time for next question. So
Okay.
It's going to be on the bonds also.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But first off, Mr. Hutchins, the question is to you with 1.5 minutes for response, please. For bringing new businesses or expansion of existing businesses in Kentucky counties, issuance of low interest industrial revenue bonds, which is what we're talking about, are routinely used. A main criterion upon issue is the number of new jobs such a business will create. Along with this bond tool, do you have additional ideas on how to bring more economic growth to our Nelson County?
Well, I was a manager for 17 years, and you just got to look at all the factories that are located here. And Nelson County had one of the largest growth spurts in our time. We did not have any companies leaving, and everything was going good. And there's all kinds of things you can negotiate with companies when you build these industrial parks. And that's another thing, that you've got sewer, gas, water, you get state grants. The county works with the cities, you put the streets in, the government, state government gives you money back so you can sell that land at a lot cheaper rate. So, you know, I was a big proponent when we built the new industrial park out there when I was on the court, and I worked with Kim Houston and pushed that project very hard to have that. If we didn't have that, we couldn't even locate it in the factories that we've got. So there's all kinds of tools out there that you can do. There's these occupational tax credits. And I'm not against industrial revenue bonds, like I said earlier, be clear on that, but when they pass that, you have authority as a fiscal court to negotiate the language in those documents. And you've got to sit down with them. And everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people wants to move to Nelson County. And you got to remember, because you got the Bluegrass Parkway, you're only about 8 to 10 minutes from the I-65 corridor, so the location of the county means a lot. You cannot give the bank away. We all got to live, we all got to pay our taxes, and if they keep doing that, we're going to be paying higher taxes, and it's not fair to the average individual out there. But I've got a record, go back and look at 17 years, I'll be writing all night long, I'll tell you how many jobs we've created.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Shelburne.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing to me that my opponent is confused on what these IRBs actually are. It's not $135 million in tax credits. That's the amount of investment that they're planning on pouring right here in Nelson County. And, you know, that investment and that $500 million that he's discussing, I'm very proud of that, because I'm here to tell you the numbers that those industries and the money that it brings into these to our community is paramount. Because if we did not have those industries here, we would be driving to Louisville just like my dad did for over 32 years to GE. But now we have the opportunity where our kids can work right here in this community. The distilleries, they have in a pie graph, they contain about 25% of the employees here in the county. They have $105 million in direct payroll. That's not to mention the downstream jobs that are created from that. Construction houses about 11% of the industry here in Nelson County. And a lot of these warehouses are being built right here in our community by folks that live here in this community. They have contributed, they've contributed to $1,814,000 in occupational tax funds. They've also contributed $729,500 in property taxes. So if Mr. Hutchins is willing to invest $135 or $200 million in this community to attract good jobs for Nelson County citizens, I'm all about giving him an industrial revenue bond. He should apply for it.
Rebuttal, I don't have $135 million to invest, but I have invested quite a bit in this county, and I haven't got the first tax break, so you can write that down in your book. The fact of the matter is it's over $9 million, and the county judge put the report out that that's what it's costing Nelson County in 2022, over $9 million with those IRBs that they did give. That's how much money it cost the county. Now, would they have located here? Some of them maybe not, but I'd say most of them would. You could negotiate it down. The 8.2 million that we're going to lose, possibly lose, and he says we're going to have to search and look for new avenues of taxes, new revenue streams. And when I look at the dictionary, it says
Time's up.
it's higher taxes, the way I look at it.
Claim my time.
Mr. Hutchins. 30 seconds, Mr. Shepherd, please.
Again, my opponent is so confused on this topic, it's almost scary to me. You know, he's talking about money we're losing. Take that Scobie Farm property, for instance. It's probably a agricultural piece of ground, and the tax revenue you're getting off of a piece of an agricultural piece of ground just turned into a $135 million investment. And we're getting that $135 million investment because we are catering to these industries. We're cultivating the ground for good paying jobs here. And I'm very concerned that with someone that has such a narrow view of what these IRBs are, we're going to be going backwards if Tim Hutchins gets into office.
I don't think the rebuttal on that, sir.
No, we're done with rebuttals right now. Next question is going to go to Mr. Shelburne. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting your sheriff tonight, and he didn't bring this up to me, but he has reported that his recruiting and retention of qualified county sheriff department officers, we're speaking of Sheriff Pineroa, of course, it's been impeded due to lack of competitive compensation. Is our compensation competitive for our region? And what might be done to aid our sheriff in adequately staffing his vital department? And this is for Mr. Shelburne first at 1.5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, there is some pay discrepancies that need to be addressed. You know, when you compare us with counties that are the same size, the same population, same budget size, our deputies are looking really good. We're above the median range. But when you look at our cousin department, which is the city of Bardstown, and look, here's the thing. We have to be competitive with Bardstown. You know, and the sheriff has made an impassioned plea to work on that, and I'm committed to do that. I've been committed since I've been a magistrate to work with the sheriff's department. Raymond is a good friend of mine, has been for a long time. You know, I was able to vote for a 7% raise this year. That was, you know, equals to about $1.75 for our lowest paid deputy. Is it where it needs to be? It could always be better. I would personally like to see our deputies be able to start out at $30 an hour. I mean, that's a big jump. And I think we can eventually get to what we need. It's my intent and my goal to make sure that none of our deputies are leaving because of money. And I think we can accomplish that with our continued broad-based growth of tax base, with our revenue growth from last year. We were able to be gracious, blessed to give a 7% raise this year. If we can continue to do that path forward, we'll be back in the driver's seat as far as competitive money with our sheriff's department. And I'm committed to that.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. Mr. Hutchins, would you like me to read the question again?
No, I can read it. And I listened to that answer, and it's just a bunch of baloney. And, you know, he's been on the court for 4 years, and they put a black eye on the fiscal court in his community when you got the sheriff and the deputies up there, a room full, almost begging for more money, and they get vocal and arguing in the fiscal court on the public and the media, and never, ever, ever happened when I was as a magistrate on the fiscal court, ever. We worked with Sheriff Jimmy Riley. We merged the county police department with the sheriff department. We bought new vehicles and got them up to scale. And when they had some issues, we brought their pay scale up. He's talking about a 7.1% increase. Well, they went backwards again. Heck, the inflation's over 8%, and it just went up again in September because of the Biden administration, which you support heavily, and all these problems that the National Democratic Party that's trickling down that's caused all these issues with high gas and inflation and everything. And he's bragging about a 7.1% increase. And then we just had deputy sheriff got shot. If that didn't bring the light to everybody a little bit. And we lost two, I think, since they argued about this. And then at the same week, they gave a budget, passed a budget that he voted for. They gave 5 other employees in other departments more raises than the 7.1. One of them actually got a $5 raise. Now, when the deputy sheriff found that out, that made him, that's a big outcry. Who do you call? He's not gonna show up when you call 911. The judge's not gonna show up, but that guy back there is gonna show up. And there's no reason, no way, shape, or form that they
I
shouldn't
claim
have
my
raises.
time.
No way
I
they
claim my
shouldn't.
time.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins.
I want to
Mr.
rebuttal,
Shelburne?
please. Yeah,
30 seconds, please.
it's sad, it's really sad that Timmy chooses to make this a political jab. I mean, you know, what we're talking about is something that's dear not just to my heart, but I think most in the community. You know, I've made the commitment. I've never voted anything against the sheriff's budget. I've voted for all the vehicles, the uniforms, and you know, to bring national politics into a local government election is nothing more than smoke screen and a political trick. Don't be tricked by him.
Time's up. I want to rebuttal on that.
Mr. Hutchins, 30 seconds.
Yeah, smoke screen. You control the budget. The fiscal court controls the sheriff's budget, and you can line out in that budget. You bragging about the vehicles. You can't live on vehicles. These guys got families out to raise, and they go out there every day. Don't know if he'll come back home to their kids. One of them just got shot. 4 or 5 cars got shot up. Luckily, we didn't have somebody murdered. They put their life on the line every day. We lost more people. And you compare salaries with these surrounding rural counties that's out there, you can't compare apples and oranges. When you're around Jefferson County that close, you gotta be comparable to rates because they can drive back and forth and work. That's the fact of the matter. He don't know what he's talking about because he don't have the experience. He hasn't ever studied it. He's never supported the
Thank you,
sheriff's
Mr.
department.
Hutchins. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Next question is going to be to you, Mr. Hutchins, and it's a 1.5-minute response. Non-city communities such as Boston, Chaplin, and Howardstown have concerns regarding fair representation and the distribution of county resources. If elected, how will you address this concern, sir?
I've already talked to a gentleman in Chaplin. We're gonna try to build a little park up there for the residents. I've talked to the people in the Costa Creek, Samuels area. They want to build a little park down there. And it's important that they get committees together to help manage those parks. You've got them in Balltown now. You've got the city's got several parks in the city of Bardstown. Bloomfield's got their parks. So these are the communities around. It's not actually a city. They need to have attention. I've talked to tons of these people about these subjects over the years, and they feel like they're left out. And I agree with that. I think they're left out. And I want to have committees come to the fiscal court. I want to work with the city of Bardstown, Fairfield, Bloomfield, New Haven, have them come to the court and have some joint sessions. Sit down. They're all part of this community. They all live in Nelson County, so we can work together. Maybe come up with some more resources. I have a lot of contacts in Frankfort and Washington, and I went after some grants as a magistrate, about $2 million in water lines to the county with Senator Dan Kelly at the time. And there's many, many ways you can do it, but you've got to work with these people in these communities. And these outlying areas, they feel like they're left out 100% because, again, they're all paying these high taxes and what are they getting back for it? And then when you give these industrial revenue bonds and all these tax breaks, they feel like they're not getting anything. So it goes back to the same old story. But I want to come to the court and all these private committees and different organizations in the county to meet with the fiscal court and get the media attention so people can understand what they need, what their needs are.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Shelburne.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to addressing those needs. I actually live in one of the smaller communities out in Nelson County. And when I go out around the community, I get to talk to a lot of different folks, and I've talked to a lot of folks down in New Haven, New Hope, and you know, my mom's family's from Boston. I go down there regularly, and you know, it's true. A lot of the outlying areas do feel like you know, they play second fiddle sometimes when it comes to services. One of the things that I am directly involved with now is that I was able to address some of our hardwired cable internet services out in the county. Through ARPA funding, we have been able to build miles and miles of cable internet service with the collaboration of the city of Bardstown to some rural areas that typically would not be able to qualify to have those services built to them. I've also been able to bring water lines into areas that have not been able to have those as well. You know, as I'm down in New Hope and I get talking to the fire chief down there, he tells me, you know what we need down here, Eric? He said, we need a fire plug. He said, as it stands, when we leave our firehouse, we got to drive up the road almost to Holy Cross to fill our water truck up. And that's something that we can get done. It's something we can get done here on the local level. They got a repeater system they're bouncing off of. And I think a lot of that is just going to take some good coordination. It's going to take the right person in leadership to be able to build those relationships and make that possible.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. The next question will be for you, Mr. Shelburne. And this is going to be a 1.5 minute response available to you. Both of our candidates have experience as magistrates on the court, though they didn't serve at the same time. Please share first, Mr. Shelburne, what differentiates you from your opponent? Be specific if you may.
Well, there's a lot of differences between me and my opponent. One of the things that I think is a distinct difference between my opponent and I is, you know, how we communicate and how do we talk to people, and also the experience that we do have. Now, my opponent, he keeps on rambling on. I haven't had any experience. Well, I've been serving with local government for over 22 years, working with the city of Bardstown, and I've been working as a public official for the past 4 years. And that right there is the most important thing that people need to keep in mind. Relevant experience. Relevant experience is so important. It takes about one term to get lost in the weeds about what's going on and, you know, how things are run. I mean, it's been so long since Timmy has been in office, I'm not even really sure they had internet then. And as things and technologies grow and things get more complicated and these relationships change and all these different people in these positions change, it's important that we have somebody that is serving right now to make a transition to the new judge that can hit the ground running and keep Nelson County going forward in a forward direction.
Thank you, sir.
Same
Mr. Hutchins.
thing, same thing. My gas bill was a lot higher then because I had to drive and talk to people who didn't have the internet. But I brought in, I'm just gonna tell you some things in my 17 years that you brought up that I'm proud of. But the big difference, two of the big differences is he's what I call a liberal Democrat and supports Joe Biden and Charles Booker and some of their policies. He was Charles Booker's big fundraiser he had, just to let you know that. He just threw his fellow magistrate under the bus in New Hope, and he should be handling the water lines over there. I actually have get water lines from Senator Dan Kelly when I was a magistrate. He called me because he was a good friend of mine. We had a $2 million grant. We helped put water all over the county. Didn't even use it in the 4th district because I didn't need water in the 4th district. So I helped out my fellow magistrates. I proposed a streetlight program. All the streetlights you see on the county entrances and the state roads and all the roads that you see now, I proposed that, and the fiscal court supported it because streetlights makes it much safer. The park, Dean Mudd's Park, you'll know what I did, and you say what's the difference from it. He hasn't accomplished anything that I can say. I can tell you how many things that I pushed through. The police merger, the police vehicles, the county employees pay. A lot of them was making minimum wage. We kept giving them the money, brought them up, got quality employees, we continue to do so. I helped blacktop the New Haven Fire Department, which was not in my district. They asked me to help them. Then I've got a relationship with a lot of the state, and as of today, every elected official in the state and the federal government is a Republican. So that's very important if you want to have the relationships to bring the grant money home to use in this county. And it hadn't been done in the last several years if you want to look at the bypasses and things that we've been left out on.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins.
Rebuttal.
Sorry.
Rebuttal.
Rebuttal, 30 seconds, please.
So, you know, I think it's really sad and it's a sign of desperation that my opponent is going to bring up Joe Biden and Charles Booker into this conversation. You know, I was at Charles Booker's event, but I was also at the event for the 9/11 day, and I had a very good conversation with Janine Hampton, which was the former lieutenant governor under Matt Bevin. But my point is, don't let him distract you from what things are the topics for Nelson County that are truly important, the things that we really plan to do as public officials. you know, it's not going to be partisan for me. This is, the discrepancies he's calling for is, it doesn't even sound like he wants to represent you unless you're a Republican or an independent.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby.
Time's up. Gene Hampton was a lieutenant governor, and since you met her, she's actually a personal friend of mine, and we've had
It's not a
some
rebuttal, is it?
meetings together. That's a rebuttal.
Is he rebuttal?
And I'm rebutting your rebuttal, I guess.
We're on the 30 seconds with Mr. Hutchins right now. You're about
Good.
15 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So, I work with everybody. I've had hundreds and hundreds of employees, and I've employed all races and women, men, and everything, and I've had relationships, and when you've been in business for many years that I have, you got the experience, you build it, and you build these relationships up, and I've just got a proven record of it.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The next question has a 1.5 minute response time. This will be going to you first, Mr. Hutchins. The Independent Planning and Zoning Office is integral to your administration. It's easy for me to say. Integral to your administration as judge executive, though it's not in your control. How will you approach this working relationship if elected, sir?
I disagree when you say that's not in your control. You have a lot of control because you do appoint some commissioners and you do approve their budget. About 70% of the budget at the planning and zoning is funded by the Nelson County Fiscal Court, which is the public's tax dollars. So if public's tax dollars is involved, I think the county judge has a lot more influence than most people think. I do think that, and my opponent's trying to use my strategy. I noticed his last 5 points he's putting out, and mine's been on there since the primary, is to simplify, eliminate as many regulations and policies and planning and zoning as we can by state law, KRS 100, and simplify the remaining, which is a lot of them under the state and fiscal court does control a lot of those policies and regulations. So there is more control than what I guess some people think. That's what the question says.
Okay.
In defense of the planning and zoning, the code enforcement, there's a code enforcement, I guess all the cities, but I know the city of Barstow has a big code enforcement office in the Nelson County Fiscal Court. The city and the fiscal court has direct control of every one of those policies in the code enforcement. And I want to defend planning and zoning a little bit for that side because they get blamed for a lot of things that is not their fault, a lot of things. So the code enforcement has direct control under the fiscal court, and you can simplify that or eliminate many, many, many of those things. Just like going and getting an outbuilding and putting in your backyard and have to get inspected when it's 10 by 12. I mean, this is an example. I mean, the government's coming in your house and telling you to do way too much,
Thank you,
and that can be done.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Shelby.
You know, the topic of planning and zoning comes up a lot, and for my opponent to say that, you know, he was the only one that ever thought of being able to work on planning and zoning is a little bit ridiculous, because it's you know, there's actually less restrictions now than when my opponent voted a lot of those in back 12 years ago than when he served. And it's true. I mean, I've had to deal with planning and zoning on a personal level myself when we built that business over in Bloomfield. My setback, I was 6 inches back in the setback, and I either had the option of paying for a variance, or I could cut my soffit off. So I paid to go through the Board of Adjustments and get my variance, and it was passed. I still don't understand what $250 makes anything. I don't know why that made it better, but it did. I mean, I'm looking forward to working and sanding down some of the rules, making it, and one way we can make it more user-friendly is a coordination between the agencies. Right now you have code enforcement, you have planning and zoning, and you have, you know, and then you have different residents in Bardstown that also has the historical review board. We need to have them all coordinated, and to where it's a simplified process, and we also need to work on changing some of these and making them a common sense, user-friendly ordinances that works for everybody in Nelson County.
Well, I think I rebut that because
30 seconds.
the way you've been on there for 4 years and you haven't made one proposal, not one proposal to do what you just said, not one. When I was on the fiscal court, they tried to pass a line of regulations, and I fought it was back in about 13 years ago, bigger lot sizes, wider streets, more pressure in the water lines, and it did not pass. The county judge was going to propose it, did not have the votes, and I blocked it and kept it out. So I have been very involved in the planning and zoning. This shows you his lack of inexperience again. That was a false statement that he said about that while ago, that they had more regulations.
One more time.
Not less
One more time.
regulations. It's not less regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Thank you very much. Mr. Shelby, you have 30 seconds.
Rebuttal. That just shows my lack of my opponent's relevant experience, because he has no idea what's going on in fiscal court. As it stands, there was recently the short-term restrictions that came across fiscal court. It was, they had some problems in the city of Bardstown that needed to be addressed, so those restrictions worked well there. I myself did not hear those same challenges in the county, and I thought that maybe these two things could be operated differently, and they could have different rules, and they do other rules. So I chose not to take that up. So for him to say that I haven't done anything or I'm completely oblivious to it is untrue.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. We're at our closing statements now. We're going to have 2.5 minutes for each candidate to give their closing statements, and that will wrap us up outside of just me telling you what a good time I had. This has been great. This really has been a lot of fun. So the closing statements for 2.5 minutes, we'll first have Mr. Shelburne to give his closing statement, please.
Once again, I want to thank Roth, and I want to thank you, Stan, WBRT, and everyone who has had a hand in organizing and put this event together. I would also like to thank everyone who came out to watch this debate, especially those who put their time aside to come here and support me. There is no doubt this will be the most critical election for Nelson County citizens in 30 years. The outcome of this judge executive race will be more impactful for Nelson County citizens because the leadership that carries the baton will be a determining factor in our future local economy and reflective of how we will be represented at the state. The next judge executive needs to understand how important it is to attract business and industry that will provide good paying jobs for future generations and broaden our tax base. The next judge needs to understand that offering tax incentives to these industries is what it takes to be attractive and help us to compete in a state and federal market to land these significant opportunities. I'm a friend of our diversified industries here in Nelson County, and I'm a friend of bourbon. It is definitely our ace in the hole and is definitely a driving factor behind our economy. The next judge executive should not be self-serving or motivated to use that role or position to position themselves for financial gain. The next judge executive should not alienate constituents because of political party, race, or demographics. This position requires that the judge must be able to build and maintain relationships, to work well with others, listen well, and most of all, be a servant of the people. And that is exactly what I plan to do as your next judge executive, a servant leader. Please like and follow my page on Facebook, Eric Shelburne for Nelson County Judge Executive, where we update our journey on this campaign. You can also visit our website, Shelburne4judgeexecutive.com, where you can donate or volunteer. We are trying very hard to reach as many folks as we can through canvassing throughout this big county. If I haven't met you, I hope to see you soon. Thank you all, God bless, and vote Eric Shelburne for your next Nelson County Judge Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Shelburne. Mr. Hutchins, you have 2.5 minutes for a closing statement, please.
I would agree there is a huge difference. The experience, I've been involved in this community my entire life, and fundraisers and churches and schools and benefits and coaching, and since I was a young adult, I farmed all my life. I know how it is to work and live on a lot less. We had to work in 2 or 3 jobs and running the store and then start a construction business. So, and I can see the people that's struggling today, and I hear it. I mean, my opponent said last time that there wasn't any, everybody was doing well, but it's not what I'm hearing. This inflation is killing people, and you got to have good leaders. You can't be a follower. You got to come up with some plans. He's made a statement many times, we gotta come up with many or more revenue streams. Never raised any taxes in my time, any new taxes. I'm against that. There's been a lot of talk about the library. I come out right now again and say that I'm 100% for the library. It's hard to get people to sit on committees and boards. I think every department and every committee in this county, when I get elected, my style is to go in and work with everybody and make them work and look and see where we can save and waste money if there's any. I'm not accusing them of wasting a lot, but when you got new leadership, you'll always find places to save and waste, save money. My experience, like I said, I've been around the county and I've been here all my entire life, but it did bother me a little bit. He said, don't be in here for self-serving interests. And I don't know if that's a dart thrown at me or not, but I would hope not. I've given my life to this community, and when I was at the fiscal court for 17 years, and put a lot of time in there and a lot of work. I'm definitely a police supporter, and I will do everything in my means to keep and retain these deputy sheriffs. There was money in the budget this time to do it. They might have got it, not everything they wanted, but those guys put their life on the line, and it's going to be my #1 goal when I get in there, because even like I said earlier, when you call them, I think you want them to show up. I'm going to support the whiskey bourbon industry and all the factories, like I said, but I want to make sure I support the small business guy and the average everyday worker out there. That's my goal. And hit the ground running. I got a plan together, and it's going to be an aggressive plan. And my work ethic, you'll see, you've never seen anything like it before. So I want to thank everybody for the time and energy, and it's been a journey. And my last statement is, I'd like to see everybody in the county to succeed. That's what I want, everybody to succeed and work together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Before these gentlemen leave, I just want to say a couple of things. First off, I want to thank the Small Business Alliance in Northern Hardin County. And that's why I'm here, because they use me for forums such as this, and they like me for some reason. And I hope that you had a pleasurable experience and you thought it was a fair experience with both candidates. I want to thank Mr. Roth Stratton and Mr. Jim Brooks for initializing, for starting this up and inviting me to come to participate. It's been a good experience, and they are very much conscious of how important November 8th election is. It's something to spend some time with and make sure you make the right decision. I also want to thank Barry and Lisa Saylor, who are my timekeepers, and they help look after me and make sure I've got water. They make sure if I need something, I've got it. And then I want to thank you guys and all the perimeter people, that the candidates for various offices. I want to thank you for coming and participating, and especially I want to thank the candidates for Judge Executive on my left and my right for coming up here and bearing their soul for us and answering questions that they didn't know what was coming. Okay, so let's give everybody a big applause. So I'll release these candidates to you, and certainly thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's a great job. Thank you, sir. Look. Yeah, that's all. I need to lose a little bit, though.